Alrighty, College Place, welcome to episode 7. This one is going to be dealing with layers. So what we're going to do first is open up Photoshop, like always, and pause the video, go do that if you need to. But for those of you who have it up and ready to go, let's go ahead and go File, create a new document, and what we're going to do is look at something about 15 by 15 and resolution of 300 pixels per inch. Make sure that it is on 16-bit RGB color and the background contents is white. And then go ahead and hit create and you should see something like this. I'm going to reset my essentials real quick so they look like yours would. There we go. Alrighty, so first things first, what we're going to do is go over here and bring our little toolbar over right onto our document, just like that. Now remember, to move anything, you're going to use the dark gray space around it. Move it just like that. Now what we're going to do is look to the right side of our document, or our Photoshop setup I should say. We're going to look at our layers panel. Make sure that you're not on channels or paths, you are on what says layers. Now what you're going to do is grab this dark gray area right here and drag this right over on top of your document, just a little bit to the right of it. And it's going to sort of shrink up just like this. But what you can do is go to the bottom corner until you get this arrow right here that looks like a resizing arrow and make it just about that big. Try and drag my screen over. There we go. Alrighty, so now we have everything we need to get started. First thing we're going to do is go ahead and keep this background locked because that is for example purposes. Make sure that that is locked and the eyeball is on. Remember that if this eyeball is off, you gotta unlock it to do that. If this eyeball is off, you're gonna have this transparent background. That transparent background, again, means that nothing is there. It's like having no piece of paper to draw on. So we're gonna keep that eyeball on and that lock on. Alrighty, now we're ready. So what we're gonna do is go down here and click and hold and grab our rectangle tool, like we discussed in the last video. We're just going to draw a quick shape. Just drag and draw any shape of your size and just fill it with any color that you please. I'm going to do blue because it's pretty. And then we will minimize that and keep it up here. So what we have now is our rectangle. Now you notice that the rectangle happens on top of our paper. This is to say, let's see, what's a good example? If I were to create a hamburger for dinner, this base layer right here is going to be the bottom bun. And this rectangle is going to be whatever it is that you put next on your burger. So to say that if I were to merge and put this square, or this square that I created, onto layer 0, which is our background, it'd be the same as saying there is cheese in the bun, mixed into the dough when we created the bun. This is probably an awful example, but it's the best way I can think of to explain it. So next, what we're going to do is create another shape, just like that. And we're going to fill it with a different color, call that yellow. So what you see here is you notice that it created a totally different layer, and that means that it's its own unique shape. So if I go and I drag around this yellow, it's not going to take the blue with it because it's not on the same layer. And if I drag the blue, it's going to do the same thing, and I can rearrange those anywhere that I want. Now, you notice that every time I click on something to move it, it changes the layer. So you can see it lights up a lighter gray right here. That means that you have selected and you are using that layer. So to rename these to make it a little easier, there's a little picture here that shows what your artboard looks like. So you can see the little blue icon right there, and you can see a little yellow one right there. Sometimes that's hard, like, you know, if you're creating a really intricate document, you're not going to really be able to tell where everything is. So what we can do is click on or double click on where it says rectangle right here, and it will light up in blue. And I can say blue square. And then just click off anywhere. Boom. Changed it right to blue square. We'll do the same with this one. Probably spelled something wrong, but that's alright. We're just going through this as quick as possible. So now we have those named. what we have here is our eyeball icons. I don't know if I explained this previously, but I'm going to go over it again just because this one's solely dedicated to layers. So these eyeball icons mean that it is visible. So if I hit the blue, boom, gone. It is completely gone. But the thing is, you can't edit it now because you can't see what you're doing. Yellow, gone. And just click that eyeball once again and it'll bring them right back. So you notice that none of them are highlighted right now. That means that there's nothing selected for me to do. So if I click this blue and do it, it's going to select it. So that means if I lock a layer, if I hit this right here, if I click my layer and I lock it, I can now do nothing to it. So if this happens to be on top of this one, which brings up another good point, then I can't do anything to it. So let's unlock that real quick. Now you notice that the yellow is on top of the blue, which means that if I drag this yellow over here, it's going to make the blue disappear because it is on top of it. But if I drag the blue over here, it's going to go behind it. Now that's because of the way the layers are set up. That's why I use the hamburger analogy, because if I have my cheese on top of my lettuce, the only way to make that lettuce on top of the cheese is to flip them. So what you can do is grab a layer. So let's grab this yellow layer, click and hold, left click and hold, and drag it. And as soon as you see that blue line right there light up, that means that it's going to place right there. So now those are switched. So now that yellow is going to go behind the blue. So this can also be done with arrangements. So let's say I select my yellow and I right click on it. Or not. Again, I get a little confused because I'm thinking of Illustrator, so ignore that little point that I just said there. The easiest way to do it is just to drag your layers around. It makes it a lot easier. So right now, let's go ahead and hit those eyeball icons on our shapes just to get rid of those, because I want to talk about layer 0, or our background layer. So this one's super important when you're doing anything, because when we eventually get to the point where we want to cut something on the laser, we're going to have to get rid of this layer, because this is like saying, it's like our piece of paper, like I mentioned before, the analogy of the piece of paper. If I draw on a piece of paper, that piece of paper is not necessarily the art that I've created, it's what I've drawn on the paper. So we're going to want to get rid of that piece of paper and only apply the pencil drawing to what it is that we're going to engrave on. So to do that, assume that we've created these two shapes and we want to cut these two shapes out, even though this would not be available to cut. What we're going to do is unlock this, click it, and then hit the trash can right here. We're going to delete it. Say yes. So now, this means that all we have is our shapes and no background. So, to add a new background, because you might be wondering, how do I get this white again, or how do I make it any color that I want? So one way to do it would be go right down here and select a new layer. That's this little folded piece of paper here. Click that and we'll add a new layer. Make sure that it's behind everything. The farther down you go on the list, so if I bring this under here, the more behind it will be to everything else. The higher it is on the list, the more on top of it it will be. So we'll bring layer 1 down here and we'll rename that background, or let's see, say layer 0. What I'm going to do is select this layer, and then whatever color that I have right in this swatch right here, I'm going to hit Alt, Backspace. And hitting Alt and Backspace, first Alt and then hit Backspace, it's going to fill the background with whatever color that you just selected. So let's see, if I select this sort of bluish green here, hit Alt and then Backspace, it is going to change that color. So you can change the background color to anything that you want, but it has to be a layer of its own. So now what we're going to do is lock that layer just so we don't mess with it. Let's see here. So now let's talk about what we can do to the shapes and stuff on this page from the layers panel. So I'm going to hit my blue square here, and you'll notice that if I'm on layer 0, these go away, which means that you cannot select them. If I hit my blue, they start to pop up. This means that I can directly edit this now. So what I'm going to do, we talked about opacity before with the brush tool. So I'm going to take the opacity down to around 50%, and you can see that it gets pretty see-through. And I can go down and down from there. So I'm going to keep that at 100%. And then the fill, what we can do is drag that down, and it's basically going to do the same thing because we have no stroke on it. Keep that up there. Alrighty, so let's select that blue square real quick. Actually, never mind, let's not do that. So, let's see here, what else is there to tell you? Let's go view here. That's about all I have. You know, there's really not much to explain other than that. The basic idea is just understanding how to layer things, how to create a new layer, how to get rid of a layer, this little eyeball tool, this little lock tool, understanding where things are on a document, and that, you know, they're all on the same plane. When you cut something on the laser, here's a good point. Basically, what we're going to do is get rid of this background here, and everything that's on the page has to be black or white. No grays, no other colors, no nothing. And that's where the vectorization process comes in, because it's basically going to take everything and make it one solid shape or color. The reason for that is the laser cannot distinguish different colors because you're only cutting in one medium, and that is basically laser. When you cut through something, it's not going to distinguish a different color and cut it differently unless you're using the photo engraving scenario, but that still uses black and white. So you sort of have to understand what to do for that. You know, for this video, that was the biggest thing I want to go over. I'm going to still use this and sort of explain it as we go, but this next video that I'm going to do is going to be explaining which images online work the best for the laser, and I'm going to show you how to manipulate those in here so that you can move to the vectorization process. Jeez, I keep saying progress. But yeah, that's about it. I hope that was helpful and understandable. Like always, please, please, please practice on your own, play with it, and just try to understand it the best to your abilities. Hope this was helpful, and I will see you in the next video.